What is your name?
Lorene Mulheron.
And how old are you now?
I am 82.
How old were you when World War II started?
I was 13 years old, a freshman in high school.
Where were you when you found out about the war?
Oh, I remember that very clearly. I was holding a very young, maybe a few months old, nephew, a little boy. We called him Butch, and I was rocking him. And as you probably know, back then we didn't have TV or anything. We just had radio. And I was listening to the radio, and they interrupted the program and said that Pearl Harbor had just been bombed. And I remember distinctly that moment and how I felt, the absolute terror, really, that I felt. I had no real concept of war, but mentally, at that moment, it was very frightening to think that we had been attacked and that people were being killed. Our citizens were being killed. So I do remember it real clearly.
How did your life change on the farm after that day?
But honestly, as a teenager, I wasn't in tune to that as much as I probably would have been had I been older. But we were alone with my parents, and we were kind of helping them a lot, my twin and I. And so we continued what we were doing, but some peripheral things took place on the farm, and that was my three brothers. Two of them were considered for the service almost immediately. One of them had rheumatic fever, and he didn't pass. And the other one, my older brother had polio when he was little, and he was crippled, so he couldn't pass the physical. My middle brother would have passed, but he was needed, and they did allow for some help to stay with the farm. And so he was deferred for a while. What I noticed being on the farm was that many of the kids that we knew, the older kids, now I was only 13, but I was young. My twin and I went to school at 5, right into first grade, so we graduated at 16. So I knew some of the older kids that were maybe 18 when they were graduating, and they were going off to the war almost immediately. Some of them didn't even graduate. They came back and went to school. But a lot of the farm kids that were of the age, 18 or older, were taken. If they had older brothers or somebody at home, they took the young kids off the farm. And it was really a difficult time for farmers because we honestly ran short of help. The farm kids always helped their dads on the farm. I mean, they were depended upon to work on the farm. And so a lot of them went into the service. And I just remember that it wasn't something that maybe affected us immediately ourselves, but it affected a lot of our neighbors and a lot of our friends. So.
Did your parents ever talk to you about the war?
My gosh, I think it's the only thing we talked about for a long time, it seemed like. It just kind of took over our lives, really. Everything about it had to do, we lived kind of in that sense that we were involved and that we had to do something about it ourselves. I think, honestly, everybody that was our age or older, and probably some younger, felt a need to do something to help our country. I felt it was the most, as I look back over my life, maybe the most patriotic time for our country, because I do feel everybody felt a responsibility. It was kind of surprising what we did, I thought. My twin and I went around talking people into buying war bonds. You could buy a war bond, I think it was 1875, and it would mature at 25. It wasn't a lot of money. There were bigger ones too. But that was the smallest, as I remember. And I think you had to have them 10 years to get the $25. And that was a lot of money. It might be $250 today.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, whether they had any money for any luxuries, they would buy a war bond rather than spend it on something else. And the same thing, that's what I remembered with us. We just did not spend any extra money. We would buy war bonds, or one of the big things for people who had any land at all was to plant a victory garden, they called it. And so right away we had our Victory Garden, and what we did with that, we'd raise extra things in the garden so we could give to other people, because people didn't want to even spend money on the food they maybe needed, and the people in town maybe didn't have it. I don't know exactly why, but we raised chickens, extra chickens to kill, to have to sell for, or to give to people actually, and eggs, things like that. It was just you just knew that you needed to help out somehow. And so living on a farm, those were the ways that we had of helping out. And it made us feel like part of it, like we were doing something. It wasn't a big thing.
Do you remember where you were when you found out that the war had ended? How did that affect you? How happy were you? How
Well,
did you feel?
I think it was in May. I should have looked that statistic up, but when they signed when the enemy signed a peace treaty, I thought it was in May, and it was a nice day as I remember it now. I may be getting this confused, but it was a great day. I mean, I remember just being ecstatic that they were signing that the war was ending, and I thought, but the dates and everything, I'm sorry to say that I may not be right. I think it was in May though. And of course, I'd gotten older. It had gone on for a number of years. I saw, in that period of time, I saw my classmates go off to war. Glenn, my future husband, as soon as he graduated, he was 18 when he graduated, and he, like all of his buddies, went to sign up to go to the service. His older brother was already in the service. Newman was already in the service, Air Force. Unfortunately, and a big shock to Glenn at that time, was he didn't pass. Many of the kids that I knew were in the service, and what we did, besides our Victory Gardens and our bonds and everything, there were USO places for the soldiers to come when they came into town. They could go there and have entertainment, but people furnished food. And so Mom would take us down on Sunday afternoon, and we'd always bake something and take it down. And the soldiers just liked to visit with people, and so we would just visit with them. And it was just a way of me having a connection with soldiers. There were a lot of cadets in town. There were a lot of troops that came through and would stop. There were a lot of specific things that I remembered that happened that were definitely related to the war. If there wasn't a war going on, we wouldn't be having all that. So I remember a lot of personal things, but nothing, where our immediate family was, had somebody overseas in war. That would have been, I can't imagine what that's like, because I didn't live through that. But we certainly felt for them, and I knew a lot of people personally, neighbor kids, and that were in the service, and you worried about them, you wrote them, and just tried to help out as much as we could.
So you feel it brought your community closer together?
It brought us real close together, Abby. It really did. We were so united. I've never seen our country so united as we were then. There weren't two parties or three parties or whatever, political parties. We were just a unified group of people. Everybody wanted to end the war. We wanted to fight it, but we wanted to end it. And it was a great time of harmony in the country, even though it was a wartime. That's the way I remembered it as a young person. I don't know I've ever seen our country more united than at that time, but we had a cause we were fighting for, and we all felt the same way, I believe. I don't remember hearing factions against the war. We all just wanted to end it, but win it. Win it was a big, important thing, because I suppose we thought if we didn't win it, we'd be at war yet, We had to win to end it.